I'd love at this point, just because we've talked a bit about the sleeping, the toileting, the behaviors, the eating issues, kind of some tips for parents specifically, because that's the majority of listeners. We have educators, we have researchers listening, we have treatment providers listening, but a lot of individuals listening want to understand, how do I help my child with like the eating issues, with having sensory issues? Talk to me about sensory and eating.
So with the eating piece too, I always say, go do the due diligence first. Make sure that there's no food sensitivities and make sure that there's no allergies going on. First step, make sure that we rule those things out, because we want to make sure that those are not impacting them also, because those increase anxiety significantly. I have seen children who, when I go to their parents and I say, can I just change their diet for a few weeks? And I'm able to change their diet, and I'll say, oh, you don't need us anymore. We don't see any behavioral issues anymore because we've changed the diet. So you always want to make sure that you address those pieces first. But then you're going to have students who, they're not eating during the day because of anxiety issues or whatever, or they're eating constantly. And we have a lot of students that do that. They want to eat all day long. And it's a comfort and it's usually they're drawn to those carb-based foods that create sugar in the body really quickly, and it makes them feel calm, and it helps to regulate their nervous system. And it genuinely does. It helps to baseline them. Unfortunately, it's not really healthy for their body, and their blood sugar does sad things afterwards. So they unfortunately need to keep eating. So I'll oftentimes advise parents, find the complex carbohydrates, vegetable-based foods, proteins that are healthy for them and help guide them in that area. Whatever things that they tend to like the most, make them enjoyable, make them a texture that they like, because they're seeking, oftentimes if you've got a kid who's more oppositional defiant, they're seeking that crunch, they're seeking that more intense chew and that sort of thing. Whereas a student sometimes with higher levels of anxiety, that sort of thing, they don't want that, or they don't want to eat at all. So you've got to be working with them on those areas to make sure that we're addressing what their comfort level is.
Because if they're picky eaters, right? Like picky eaters are really common in our practice. You can't pack those foods for lunch or snack. They're not going to eat it, and you can't force them to do it because there's a reason they're not eating it.
Right.
I do want to bring up oppositional defiant disorder because you've brought it up a lot, and I get it, because these kids become oppositional because of their feeling dysregulated and unsafe. But I want our listeners to understand, by no means are we implying that oppositional defiant disorder is a cause of SM. It's more that our kids become like having difficult behaviors, as I call it, challenging behaviors, because they're so dysregulated. And so it's about helping them feel regulated, because they can't help it. It's not like they're trying to torture us. They can't help it. It's how they're feeling inside.
Yeah, and being regulated is the key. It's the key for them to be successful in life, teaching them how to be regulated. I've been working with a young woman, she's 9 now, for a couple of years, and she had severe anxiety, had a lot of challenges with speech and everything throughout the years. She and I did an interview recently, and I said, what was the biggest thing that helped you? What do you feel like in all the things that you've tried? You've changed your diet, you've changed your sleeping patterns, you've been able to work really hard, and some of your bathroom issues have resolved. What do you feel like has helped for you? And she said, out of all the things, she said, I think what helped the most, she said, was when I changed my diet. She said, and when I learned how to do mental rehearsals. And she's talking about mental rehearsals as meditations. So she started meditating with us, and it was really short, 30 seconds at a time. We increased it to a minute. We started with mindfulness, transitioned it over time into meditation. And she said, for me, that's been the biggest change in my life. She said, I'm able to fall asleep in less than 10 minutes now. I'm able to get up and go through things during the day. I've even taught my friends how to do it. So the fact that she's able to use these strategies and has actually worked with other peers on these strategies is significant. But every individual is different as far as what's going to work for them.
And children don't understand. So they end up reacting behaviorally because they don't have the skills and the tools to say, hey, mom, I really need time to decompress and just listen to soft music. Or I need to go out for a walk now in the neighborhood because that'll help regulate. They can't do that. So as adults, they start to be able to understand and they start to figure out what makes them feel better, what makes them feel worse, and what they need to do for themselves. So this is a definite challenge. And this is why the look, listen, and learn is so important, because what are your children telling you without telling you?
Right. And that's a great area for parents to dip into and say, boy, it looked like you felt in a certain way at this time. Can you tell me what you think you felt? And then maybe we can talk about it and I can tell you what I saw, and really kind of help them to process through some of that so that they can have a better understanding for where their body is at and how they're feeling. And the parents can have a clearer understanding of that.
I love that you just said that too, Dr. B, because one of the things that is real that I talk about a lot is really having conversations with your children. I know we're talking about SM, and there's a percentage that have language challenges, like 30% plus, that can have some language. So their expressive language may not be as, as developed as others, but for the majority, they can have these conversations. Even if they're doing writing or expressing themselves through art or music, they can express. So I love that you're being open. One of the things that we talk about a lot is dealing with that pink elephant in the room, not avoiding it, but talking about it. Hey, I noticed that when you came home and you seemed really frustrated by that. So I always say give words for their feeling if they're not there yet. Because a lot of the kids just can't express themselves. They don't understand what they're feeling. And so giving them words for their feeling, having an open dialogue. Hey, let's try this together rather than you need to or you should or why are you doing that, where they feel attacked and they then become more avoidant and they don't open up. So I love the way you just described that to our listeners about having that dialogue openly and really saying, hey, let's talk about this. I know this is hard for you. I know this can cause you frustration. How about this? Let's try this.
Yeah, many of them, they say that they feel like part of the reason why they don't communicate as much is because they feel like the expectations are so high. They're like, I can't ever achieve it. If I can't ever achieve those expectations, why would I even try? And to hear that, and it's like, and it's expectations that they feel somehow have been imposed on them. And oftentimes it's the expectation that they've created sometimes for themselves because of where they feel society has created for them.
Yeah, and it's reinforced by their treatment providers that don't understand, parents that think it's all about speaking and only speaking. So it's all about starting at that starting point of speaking, whereas you've got to be before that piece to feel like to have an understanding of that child, teen, or even the adult that's going through this to be able to understand themselves and to have that open dialogue. When you said this to me, it made me think about like at every single communicamp, one of the things we say is when you see your children, talk about what you learned. Tell them, wow, you know what? I didn't realize when I was doing this may have caused that. Or, hey, I learned a lot about the social communication bridge. And then that opens it up to, they also learned about the bridge. And I realized that when we're out and about, let's say at a restaurant, I'm asking you to speak, hey, why don't we bridge down and try it here? You're still on the bridge. And you see the children open up and feel safe to open up to their parents because the parents are understanding them. And it isn't just about speaking, because many of these kids, like you said, they can't. Whether they're in an environment that's causing them to shut down and feel dysregulated, or they can't articulate it, or they can't process the information in the environment. So all of a sudden, you start meeting them where they're at, Dr. B, and it's amazing how these children start to open up, and that lowers their anxiety and avoidance. And then they feel safer and they're able to trust the process more and take those leaps. I get
Absolutely.
excited. Notice?
Yeah. I do see that. It's great when you feel like you've made that connection and that individual says to you, I can see that. I feel that way too. I feel connected to you. And I had a recent experience with a student who'd had a horrible experience in elementary school and was in middle school now. And he would bring it up periodically. And I looked at him one day and I said, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but I'm telling you it. I'm sorry that you had that experience.
Yeah,
You
I'm
shouldn't have
sorry. I
had
love it.
that. I'm so sorry that you had that. How you were treated was wrong. And he started to cry, of course. And then anytime I would come into that program afterwards, he would immediately be like, I want to talk to you about something. And we would have this conversation, very deep conversations about things that were going on. But for him, it was really about someone taking some ownership. I didn't have any ownership over the elementary program, but he needed somebody to say, what I felt happened in my head wasn't okay. Somebody please validate me on that. I need to be validated, and I need to feel like I can move forward from it now.
Yeah, no, this is like a whole separate conversation about helping children feel validated and accepted and meeting them where they're at rather than having these expectations that are probably unrealistic, at least at the start.
Yes.
Uh,